So, Susie McCabe,
Hello.
thank you very much for coming into the Herald to join us today. We're obviously here to talk about 10 years of the tie campaign and the impact that's had on Scottish education, and we'll get to that, we will. But it'd be good, I think, to maybe talk a bit about your story, a bit of kind of your experience getting up to this point of becoming the patron of the tie campaign. So I think kind of the first thing I wanted to ask you was, we're here talking about inclusive education in schools and that difference that can make for kids. What was school like for you? So when were you at school and what was that experience like?
So I was at secondary school August 91 to June 1997. I started primary school August 84. So my entire education was underneath a Conservative government, which was cutting back education. There's 8 years between me and my older brother. And I always remember thinking, Mark got books and I got photocopies. You know what I mean?
Right, okay,
there was only one set of books in the department by the time I was at school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was, I would say, for me, the education bit of school was merely an inconvenience to my social life. But I actually enjoyed school.
Mm-hmm.
Like I went to a good school, I was involved in the school, I played rugby, done my Edinburgh, all that kind of stuff. But I went to a Catholic school, was brought up Roman Catholic, and you were growing up at a time when a government actually brought in a law to stop you finding out about homosexuality in gay people.
Section 28.
Yeah, Section 28. And that was really difficult within itself, right? At the time, you don't think, oh, this is going to really affect my life, because I'd have been 7, 8 years old. However, what I did know was that I liked girls at that time. And I knew that from a very, very early age and a very young age. But I also knew what was going on in society.
Mm-hmm.
I actually done a show called Femme Fatality, and the BBC recorded it. And it was about me talking about kind of feeling a failure as a woman. But it was actually about going, well, when I was born, it was like this, and television was like this, and this was the portrayal of homosexuality.
This is what things looked like in the culture at that point.
Yeah. Lesbians always died, men always contracted HIV and AIDS. There was always a relationship between men where one man was older and one man was younger.
Right.
And he would always be below the age of consent, which was 21 for homosexuals. So it always had those really negative connotations attached to it from a societal perspective. And then as you're kind of hitting your teenage years and stuff, you know you're gay, but you cannot tell a soul. You know that you're going to be rejected. You know that your family aren't going to be open-minded about your sexuality. You know that you don't have a teacher you can tell, because you can't go to a teacher because Section 28.
Because they're actually not, it's not even a cultural thing, they're not allowed to talk to you about it.
To talk to you about it. I mean, you couldn't even go to a library, and this is the thing as well. It's Section 28 wasn't just about your education, it was about, like, you couldn't go into a public building and get a book to go and read or to go and learn. So there was nowhere for you to go. There was nowhere for you or anyone to talk to. You were too young to go out in a gay scene. You didn't know where the gay scene was, so it was just...
The internet as well, obviously, that would change that equation a bit, obviously.
Very much an analogue childhood, very much an analogue childhood. Yeah, so all of that, and you put all that together, and, it's something that I see now, but in 1987, Margaret Thatcher stood up at her party conference and seen all these children were getting taught by the hard left communist teachers, and they were being told that they had an inalienable right to be gay. And it was basically they need to be taught morals and they need to be taught values, and they don't have a right to be gay. And that was coming from the top of the tree. Now, when that comes from the top of the tree, you're very aware of that in a sociological way, because even at the age of 7 and 8, you're aware that gay's bad, gay's diseased, gay's death, gay's promiscuous.
Abnormal as well, that idea you're something different from what is normal and good and right.
Because what's normal, good is right is man, woman, it was the old, do you remember the old line, It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Oh, right. And it was heterosexual, man, woman, 2.4 children, cars, you know, the women can get a part-time job. Do you know what I mean? You can get a part-time job, love, once the kids are back at school. There was no real kind of encouragement to break away from that. And the gay culture that you've seen in television was very much London, Soho, seedy, debauchery.
Right.
You know, you didn't have the respectability now that, I mean, you go into any kind of new build housing estate anywhere in the UK, I guarantee you there's at least one gay family in there. That would never have been portrayed in television. That just wasn't an option.
Yeah, that was a complete alien thing. So obviously, like at that age then, because you've spoken before about your experience of coming out when you were 17, was it? And it not going at all well.
No.
Obviously.
No.
But so one of the things that, there was no possibility then at that point. So you left high school in 97, I went to high school kind of a year after that. No possibility at all at that kind of stage that you could have come out at school.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I've had this chat with people as well. Like, you need to understand, like, if you'd have come out at school, when I was at school, when you were at school, like,
absolutely
you had to leave school. Like, it's...
I mean, I literally came out to my parents and had to leave home like 20 minutes later. So the idea of coming out at school, no.
Not even
not an option.
Aye.
Not an option. It was actually quite funny. On Saturday night, we were having a conversation, and one of my friends from that generation of my school friends was telling one of my other friends who's relatively new in my life, they were like, we didn't know because Susie just left. And you didn't have mobile phones. Or you did have mobile phones, but not to the way they are now. Yeah. Not everyone had one. And they were like, Susie just disappeared. And nobody told my friends where I was or why, Yeah, so they had to kind of come and find me working. And I had to tell them. And some people took it well, other people not so well.
That was something that obviously just, because that's something that always comes back to me when I speak to people now. And I speak to like teenagers now who talk about like going to high school and being openly gay or openly bi or something like that, and like they don't understand what that's, and that's good that they shouldn't need to understand the context of that, but the context of the change that's happened there in one generation is quite remarkable, actually.
Absolutely, and that's really important. And I love the fact that they can just be like that. They can go to a school disco and whatever else, you know, and that's so important. But I do also kind of think I want you to appreciate what you've got, because what you've got is so much more than what the generations who fought for you to be able to do that ever got.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we lose sight of that without sounding like an old gay. But I think sometimes we lose sight of the journey. And history is really important. Right, history is so important, and your gay social history is really important. And I do feel that there is an element between my generation and those kids at school now that are just like, it's a bit boring, innit? Harvey Milk, it's a bit boring. I don't need to know about that because I've got this.
Because it's fine now. What's the problem?
It's not as if there's any form of culture wars going on or any kind of anti-LGBTQ plus agenda happening here. There's absolutely none of that going on. So yeah, we just need, there's a conduit that we need from people 40 and younger, 40 and younger down to about 13, 14. We need a conduit because that thread's been a wee bit lost.
Because they've come through such a different kind of, say I'm 38 and things, so I was at school when Section 28 was repealed. I don't imagine it has a huge impact right away at that stage, for say people I was at school with who were gay. But suddenly that major legal barrier that was there that stopped your teacher even talking to you about it or whatever, that was gone. It started to change things. And then the change that we've had over the kind of period since then. And is that something, as you obviously after you've left school, you work in construction and stuff?
I did. I worked in construction. Absolutely fine.
Like
absolutely fine. Never really suffered any homophobia. More sectarianism.
Catholic in the West of Scotland.
Aye. And And you know what? That was all right because everyone got it. So you might have got it for your team, or you might have got it for your hair colour, or you might have got it for your weight, or do you know what I mean? But I never got it for my sexuality. Never ever got any grief for my sexuality.
Right.
Because we have a thing in this country where we look down our nose at working class men. And what you actually forget is that working class men know working class women. And ultimately you all come from the same place. But what we've had is governments, successive governments in the UK, cultivate a culture that working class straight men are the enemy. When actually, generally what I've found in my time, it's really nice middle class men called Alistair in golf clubs that are the problem.
It's the guys in suits, not the guys in trackies.
No, the guys in overalls tend to be self-educated. They tend to be clever. Jimmy Reid, Billy Connolly, these guys weren't BAMs. These guys were just self-educated. So we kind of have this thing in the UK where we look at poverty and we look at working class men. And this is part of the problem because these working class men don't feel that they have somewhere to go to now, right? And I guarantee you that the majority of working class men in a pub on Friday night anywhere in this city will be fine. They do not care if you walk in there with your partner that's same sex. They don't care. Walk into a golf club or a bowling club, they'll be eyebrow.
Then you get a comment, then
Yeah, but then what happens is,
like that,
it's all right though because he's Alistair and he's a quantity surveyor and he's been educated. So that's all right for him to be homophobic.
Drives the Merc, so it's all good.
Yeah. And you see it and you know what, whereas the wee guys in the overalls, and what we've managed to do in this country is create a culture war in a vacuum where these straight guys who are working class are watching the news or they're on their socials if they're young and they're looking at people like Andrew Tate going, you don't have anywhere, you don't belong anywhere. And they maybe do feel a little bit lost. And instead of kind of going, well, the enemy of my enemy is that they've fractionalised that whole class band and they've started this culture war. So this is how we have a vacuum for Nigel Farage. This is how we have a vacuum for Andrew Tate. Because they're appealing to these men who feel a bit lost because the men above them look down their nose at them and they see women surpassing them in their careers and they don't understand it, not through a lack of education. They just go, what is it I've done wrong? And they've not actually done anything wrong. But we have managed to let people in to become vocal and fractionalise that, and that is then affecting now the LGBT community. It's affecting the trans community at a ridiculous rate. I know it's the immigrant communities, and we're not all coming together. And at some point we need to all come together because we're the 99%.
As opposed to getting pulled apart.
Yeah.
And
because if we all come together as a coalition, well, the world would be a better place.
Yeah.
But what happens is people get a bit above their station and go, well, I can now look down on you because I'm a better person because I wear a suit.
Put a ladder up behind me as well sometimes.
All the time.
And so is that then, so that sort of culture war that we've seen over the last couple of years that's very broad, sort of in spectrum, as you're saying there, is that part of what's led to you becoming involved with the Thai campaign? Like, how did that happen? How did you first get to know Liam and Jordan, and then to the point where you've become like patron of a national charity?
Well, I think I love the term culture wars because people go, we're living in these times of culture wars. And I'm like, I am a Roman Catholic lesbian from Glasgow. I've been in a culture war for the past 45 years.
Culture war, you like?
I'm on, I'll show you Glasgow in July, right? Yeah, so I've always been pretty passionate about LGBTQ plus rights. I've had a lot of equality. I was very much the analogue Section 28 kid up to the equality, you know, being married twice and same-sex marriages and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, just saying that before, you're so committed to equality that you've
done it twice.
You've done it twice,
I failed at it twice, but that's another story. And I think it's that thing where I always think that you get to a certain age in your life and you realise that you're living your life, but the decisions you make are really going to impact the people coming behind you. And I'm still of a generation of gay people who had a generation above them who taught them things. That generation went to more funerals than I'll ever go to in my life.
Yeah.
And that generation worked really hard for me to be accepted and get my equality. And they kicked in the doors. They really battered down the doors. They kicked in the doors and they fought and they took the homophobia and they took the snideness and they took the little attacks from journalists outing people in newspapers, sitting. But now today, I'm sitting with journalists going, you know, there's a gender war going on and it's a cabal and you're like, is it? Who's got the time for that in the modern world, right? I'm not going to be busy creating a cabal when there's TikTok to be watching, right? Do you know what I mean?
Better things to do.
Exactly. So I think as I was starting to see us lurch to the right, and I just felt I was seeing things and hearing things that I would have seen and heard in the 1980s. Stuff that was getting lauded at people, and even just headlines on social media: trans killer, trans rapist. And then the next one would be just not a heterosexual straight white man who abused his wife. It would just be...
You don't have to mention that part because
never
that's
need
normal.
to mention that because that is normal. That is normal. And that's what the stats tell us. That these people are getting hung out to dry with newspaper headlines that are representing their community by showing two people that are the very worst of their community. We don't measure all men to the standard of Peter Tobin and Peter Sutcliffe, right? So why are we doing that with the trans community?
For a vulnerable community.
Yeah. So as I start to see the world lurch to the right and I start to get a bit more and more concerned over it, and then you start to hear the voices, the Farage, the Tates, the Trumps, the Rishi Sunaks. Let's never forget the Prime Minister who made a trans joke in front of a mother who had lost her daughter in the Houses of Parliament. Brianna Jai's mother was sat in the public gallery and he's thrown in tuppence worth asking Keir Starmer what a woman is. Like, absolutely disgusting behaviour. And then I started to see people in public office use language that jarred me. And there comes a point when somebody comes to you and says, Susie, we think you've got a good voice for us, you're a good fit, you're working class, you're gay, you're very visible. Would you be a patron of our charity? Because our charity is about inclusive education. It's about age-appropriate education in schools and also in workplaces to educate the damage that this stuff can do, but also look at the amazing people that came from this community, and you've got somewhere to go. You've got people to talk to. And when you feel alone and when you have dark thoughts, we're going to try and stop you having that, because we're going to say you're important and you're loved regardless of who you are or how you identify.
That's something you want to be involved in.
That would have changed my life.
Well, see, that's what I was going to ask next. If you had, what kind of impact do you think in these 10 years that TIE have existed? You know, Scotland's become the first country to have LGBT-inclusive education in schools. Kids tell you about differences in schools. What kind of difference do you think that would have made to you when you were a teenager? Like if you had been 14 in school, but with the TIE campaign there, with this kind of culture developing there, would that have mattered to you at that age?
100%.
That affected you now as an adult? You know?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my education trajectory would have been completely different because I didn't apply myself. I took drugs to try and get away from the feelings that I was having, and also the feeling of fear of having to tell my family, who I knew would not be open-minded and welcoming to this situation, and the pressure of that. So when I should have been concentrating on my education, I was in a kind of permanent state of flux, going, I don't know how I'm going to do this, and I don't know what's going to happen here, and I don't know what the fallout's going to be. So what do you do? Because it's not like I could have came out to my parents and then went to one of my mates' houses and their parents took me in, because that wouldn't have been the done thing, because homosexuality wasn't accepted.
Yeah.
So you were limited in what you could do, and you knew you could end up homeless and you could end up in the street. Thankfully, I had my wee nana. But that's a thing. Imagine carrying that weight about with you, age 14.
Aye, that's what I think about a lot when I speak to students who talk to me about it, or when I'm writing about it, or sort of doing work on sort of the Thai campaign over these 10 years, and it's come up when I've been putting together this sort of bit of work we're doing just now. Think about that. Think about the students that I used to have. I was a teacher before I was a college lecturer, before I was a journalist. And I still think about, there's a couple of students that I had way back in Arran, who, if they're watching this, probably know who they are. And I still think about that, like what must it have been like for them at like 13 and 14? And that was teaching before Thai campaign appeared, before that became a sort of driver.
I think as well, like, it's quite funny, right? Because kids will be like, I was misgendered. And I'm like, I've looked like this my entire life. I've been misgendered my entire life, right? And I do kind of go, I know it's hard sometimes when you put on the news and all that, but that's not just what's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of go, you actually don't know how much better it is. And you kind
which, as we say, is good.
Which is great.
To not have to carry that, obviously, must be progress.
Great. But you also, there's a kind of selfishness attached to that they forget that there's kids just now who are gay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be coming down that path.
And they're coming into a different
vibe,
world, a different kind of place from what
yeah.
we've seen maybe the last 10 to 15 years where things have been
better
progressing.
And that's something that you need to kind of go, right, up you get. You need to march, and you need to be visible, and you need to be here, and you need to be out and loud and proud. And I'm not quite willing to do that all the
part
time.
Of that's been a bit, and that's part of your sort of position with Tabs, is wanting to kind of support that
loads
sort of thing and try and do that. So if it's been 10 years, then 10 years of Thai, in which time, as I say, first countries to become the first country to have LGBT-inclusive education embedded in the curriculum. These curricular resources that are available, you can talk to kids about the progress. You can hear the stories, like about kids who talk about their lives having been transformed or saved sometimes, like from what's happened here. What's next then? 10 years seems like a kind of good point to stop and celebrate maybe the last 10, but ask yourself what maybe comes next.
Liam made a great point the other day when he said, I feel as if that 10 years has just been an apprenticeship for the next 20 years, right? And I was like, you want to try 30 years, son? I'm exhausted. I think there is an element of that. I think none of us know what direction the world's going in.
Mm-hmm.
It's so volatile, and it's been so volatile for so long. And that's part of the reason that we have these kind of populist politicians having oxygen, because our mainstream have let us down. But with populism, generally comes a bit of hate.
Mm-hmm.
And with hate, you need to stand up and you need to fight it. And it would be great to be like, well, Thai could run for another 5 years, and then that would be our job done. And we can all walk
finished
into the Gran Canaria sunset. Right? But the fact of the matter is, this job will never ever finish. But it's like show racism, the red card. There's no end in sight.
Uh-huh.
Society is cyclical, and it peaks and troughs. Where we're at just now is the world needs to shed a generation, which happens automatically, and things will change again. They'll be a little bit organic, in the same way that those people maybe born in the 19-teens, if you like, in the 1920s, maybe weren't going to be very open about homosexuality or accepting about it. But as the world changed and they lived a life, they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only say that from my own personal experience. And what you're hoping is that in 20 years' time, you're sitting having conversations with people who in their teens and in their 20s are like, yeah, I had trans friends at school and they were great. And it just, sometimes it takes a bit of that, but we've got to do that. We've got to use the platform of education. Education is where we can fundamentally change how people view the world. So if they're going home to a house that's homophobic, misogynistic, racist, any of those things, if you catch that at school, you can change. And it's not about changing them as a person. It's about showing them the world through a different lens. Gone are the days where you sat with your parents and watched a documentary or you watched the news together. It just doesn't happen now. So education is the key here. And the future, the younger generations are the hope, they're the great white hope. And it's a shame because it's a pressure that has to be on them. But it will come as long as people like me and Jordan and Liam, and then we have our allies all kicking about and using their platforms for good and using their platforms to say, in you come, you're loved, everything's going to be okay. It might be sad for a while, but in the long run, you're going to be all right. Trust us. And we've got to fight that fight for them just now, because when it comes, it'll hopefully be easier for them.
So 10 years of TIE has brought 10 years of progress, but it's progress that's fragile and needs to be, particularly at this point, needs to be defended.
I think when you live in a world where the President of the United States can roll back on female body autonomy,
you know you're
can be taken away from you. Then. Because that's the thing with rights. It's one thing to fight for a right and to get a right, but to see a right being taken off of people. And if you're doing that to heterosexual women, what are you going to do to LGBTQ+?
And kids in particular.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do, and what are you going to do to our marriages and civil partnerships that have maybe never been upgraded, and families that are same-sex parents with children? Because if you're rolling back on that, what else are you willing to roll back?
Who else could be at risk at that point?
Yeah, I mean, the other week, Nigel Farage came out and said, if I had been in Parliament, I wouldn't have voted for gay marriage. Well, you've been married twice. It's not like you're taking this from a Christian perspective.
This isn't about the sanctity of marriage here or anything.
You know, and then it's also that thing where when people, that's just noise, right? That's just a noise. But that's the type of thing in his car, in his van, in his taxi, on the bus, whatever he's listening to, goes, I wouldn't have voted for that. Come to think about it, I don't actually like that. And you're like...
And that is part of the kind of chipping away of the rights and the progress that we've seen.
They just make noise all the time. So unfortunately, now is the time that we need to make noise.
You're going to have to make the noise as
well.
But
our noise will be nice, bright, rainbow coloured. It'll be fabulous.
Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to me today. As I say, we're looking at 10 years of TIE. It's been great to be able to speak to somebody who's been affected, I suppose, by the kind of journey that Scotland's gone on. And we'll be interested to see what comes next for you.
Well, aye. It'll be a fight. Let's get marching. Let's go. Work to do.
Thank you very much, Susie McCabe.
Yes, thank you.